Hey, it's AJZulu here, and welcome to a video called Let's Save Zoe. Now, what does that even mean? With this video, we just want to talk about the different types of changes possible to make Zoe more fun in the sense of playing against her. Now, for those who wouldn't know, she is currently having one of the highest ban rates ever in League of Legends, and it's not due to her high win rate. No, it's that she's quite well balanced in the sense of gameplay and like actually having a lower percentage than 50% win rate if she actually gets played, but people are still banning her because they just refuse to want to play against her. So that seems to be the biggest problem with Zoe at the moment. It's similar to how Yasuo is, since the person who made Zoe is also the person who made Yasuo, where everyone seems to say he's OP and they just simply ban him regardless of actual statistical facts. But we're not gonna get into that. I will go through each of the abilities and the possible changes that could make it more fun for the enemy to play against, while still not being or nerfing Zoe or nerfing actual damage altogether. The first thing that I want to talk about is actually Spell Thief, which I would find one of the more interesting abilities, second to Sleep. And first of all, I would say that Spell Thieves, or at least the minions with these balloons, should not give Zoe any type of summoner spell. No, all summoner spells should be stolen from actual summoners or enemy champions. If an enemy used their summoner spell, she has the ability to steal from them, not to just get a free teleportation from, or here we have Ignite and here's a shield from minions. Minions, at the very least, if they still want to keep it, should just give items, and currently we have a very long list of items that Zoe actually gets, which are Righteous Glory, which I've never received ever playing Zoe so far. Randuin's Omen, never got that one. Locket of Iron Solari, and the usual Blade of the Ruined King, Redemption, Hextech Gunblade, Hextech GLP, Zhonya's, Yomu's, and that's about it. As for the other items that they could actually implement if they take out the ability to get summoner spells through creeps, are Edge of Night, which is a pretty strong item to stop incoming abilities. Also, another item that Zoe can get currently is Talisman of Ascension. Another item that is possible but currently she does not get is Banner of Command, the upgrade to Tear of the Goddess AP version, Sephiroth's Embrace, I think, and Makiro's Scimitar, which the Summoner Cleanse would just be the same thing, basically. Take out CC. The next thing with W, beyond mini increase not being able to give Zoe any summoner spells, is also that the balloons shouldn't really be showing this star. Like, why is that, right? It just creates this RNG where Zoe does not know what she's gonna get, the enemy does not know what she's going to get, and it just creates this no win situation. If the star itself actually shows like this indication, like as while the minion is still holding the balloon but just shows this, then the enemy would then know, oh, she's gonna get this item. Since that's a heal summoner spell, we don't want that. Like, this is a, let's say this is a Zhonya, so it's like, okay, Zoe can know that it's a Zhonya's coming out. The enemy would know, oh, she has a chance to get a Zhonya's, I'm gonna have to try to zone her out of it, or at least prevent her from getting the last hit. The next thing with that is let the enemy have the chance to actually deny whatever item is dropped, similar to Bard's healing orb, where the enemy could actually step on top of it and destroy it. I'm not sure if this could be done with Zyra, the plant girl, and her small seeds, or at the most or least be similar to Ilawi's tentacles, where it takes like 2 shots to destroy them. This is just another way for the enemy to be able to deny Zoe from getting a very powerful item. Now, I'm not saying all of these things should be implemented. These are just options or possible things. Pick one or the other, let's say. So if it's going to just give both items and summoner spell, then maybe just add the part where the enemy could step on top and deny the item itself. Anyways, the next part is that Zoe, with the changes where she can only get items from creeps, but have to steal summoner spells from only enemy champions, then she would then need some kind of ability to actually capture them. Since it seems that her ability is all based around like this yo-yo, I always feel like her Q is almost like a yo-yo effect, where she's throwing it in one side and then she's pulling the yo-yo to make it go farther. This could sort of be a skill shot where she has to aim like a short skill shot, maybe shorter than her E, but a skill shot nonetheless, to just grab those orbs from the ground instead of having to just walk up to pick it up. Just an option here. And the last thing is just, why is there no mana cost to even cast it in the first place? So in this case, Zoe has basically unlimited possibilities, or no limitations with casting W at all, as long as she's able to pick up an enemy summoner spell or item that has dropped on the ground. She will always be able to cast this spell. Just adding a small mana cost would already be somewhat of a change or crazy balance change for her in the first place. That being said, I will be adding some voting polls on the top right hand corner of the video for you to be able to like interact and vote, like which one seems to sound pretty good, which one maybe does not sound like a great idea for people who are facing Zoe, or even for Zoe players themselves. Again, we're just talking about trying to balance in such a way that it's fun to play against and also fun to play. Currently, she's quite fun to play, but playing against her, not so fun. So let's move on to sleep. And this is the first time that League of Legends has implemented the sleep mechanic. I've made a video talking about the difference and what is sleep mechanic in Dota 2 and what does Zoe does. Now in League, we know Zoe has initial damage, and if you wake the target up ahead of time, they then take double damage in pure. This is absolutely crazy, since the target is would be slowed for 1 second and then be asleep for 2 seconds, and that's basically a 3-second CC. And as for stuns go, 2 seconds stun or sleep is quite long in League of Legends. In Dota 2, sleep is actually a setup tool. It doesn't do damage most of the time. It, like, if it does damage, does very little damage, because it's a setup for the next ability or for a teammate to use one of their powerful abilities that might take a long cast animation or a long traveling time. But in Zoe's case, is both a slow, then a 2 seconds stun if the enemy does not wake up your target, and then it does pure damage on top of that, And not to mention, it can go through walls infinitely, increasing its range even more. It's a sort of terrain crowd control where it was just gonna be on the ground for a few seconds until someone comes and steps on top of it. It's like quite good if you place it like here, let's say, and stop enemies from walking through. Here's another good show point, another and another down here. You get the point. Even in Dragon here, and the enemy wouldn't want to walk out, and then you sort of cornered them in, something like that. So this ability does maybe a little bit too many things, which is too good. One thing for this ground, at the very least, maybe just once it hits the ground, it gets smaller over time, and so it does not block the terrain for such a long duration. I can understand that the pure damage might be for Zoe to do pure damage, but one more thing that I have not mentioned that this ability could do is that at the bottom, if you hit an enemy with this ability, your cooldown is refunded by 25%. It gets higher in the next level, I believe.
I hope this world survives. I like it.
But that's just another thing that this one ability could do, which refunding your cooldown just for hitting your abilities might be, is it too strong? Just a question, just questioning it, you know? Is that too strong? Of like, I hit my ability, now I get a refund, now during a team fight I'll cast it even more. And for a stun like this, maybe it's frustrating. It could be changed to refund your mana. That's another option. Hit a target, refund your mana, and you're able to fight much longer without worry of running out of mana. Once the bubble falls, the radius here gets smaller over time. That's an option. Maybe the initial just throwing without throwing it out like this might be a bit slower compared to throwing it through walls. Walls could be fast, while throwing it through the air is slower. Those are other options. Or maybe the initial hit, the first hit does lower damage, similar to Q. If you just throw it straight, it does minimum damage, but when you proc it, like the second time, it does more damage. So when you hit the target with Q, it might do minimal damage, similar to minimal damage from Q, and when you wake up the target ahead of time, it does that sort of quote-unquote maximum damage from Q. Just a small comparison. Jump seems to be no real problem with it. It's just a jump, and it cannot be used as an escape. You could dodge a lot of projectiles if you're fast enough, which seems to be really cool. But just a fun idea is that what if the counter to the jump, since we see the animation wise, she jumps out of the portal, back in, and goes back. But what if she goes into a portal, then she gets knocked up, and since she's knocked up, she cannot go back into the portal, and thus canceling her portal back. I think it's a silly idea, but I'm just gonna mention it for fun. As for her passive, a lot of people seem to be comparing her passive with Lux, and Lux's passive seems to be weaker actually compared to Zoe. Feel free to correct me if that's not true, but she has better scaling, though I believe her base damage is lower than Lux by about 20, but percentage scaling is higher. Lux has 20% scaling, while Lux has Zoe has 25%, while Lux has 20%. So Zoe has a higher scaling with her passive than Lux. Another thing that seems to be absolutely crazy with Zoe, and I would like to take out Lich Bane because I don't want the proc on it. Let's just get Ludens. This passive seems to be amazing for pushing because there's no cooldown actually, and unlike Lux where she needs to hit her spells to proc it with her auto attacks, Zoe doesn't need to. She just hits and then she has her passive, and with Q you can actually use the passive twice. So when it comes to auto attacking or pushing, things could be a little bit crazy. So let's just see. We have 1 auto attack, 2 auto attack, 3 auto attack, and even ulti 4 auto attacks, and all of that is 150 damage to the tower 5 times, or 4 times, 5 including spell thief if she has a spell to use, which if she gets like any kind of gun blade, she could push the creep wave and then very easily and push the tower quite efficiently. Of course she's not the best lane pusher out there, but I don't think this is something to underestimate, possibly. So I'm not sure if this thing should have any kind of cooldown or should be changed. I just want to mention it as a cool interaction for when pushing towers, or like taking other objectives like Dragon or Baron here. So like basically you're with your team, you get 1 shot, hit 2 shots, 3 shots, 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shots. You kind of get the idea. So now the biggest thing with Q. I'll say I had an idea where there is a maximum damage and you couldn't go higher, but that's a terrible idea, since someone is just going to say buy these 2 or 3 AP items, then there's no point to getting more, so you just go tank after that, if there was ever max damage on Q. With that said, if the maximum cooldown is 30%, cooldown is reduced by 30% if Sleepy Trouble hits an enemy. If that is moved to Q, what would that be like? Maybe a little bit too strong, since the damage is so high. But if they reduce the damage in some kind of meaningful way, but implement where if you hit someone you get a 30% cooldown refunded back to you, so you could cast more. So instead of being that 1 shot, it's more like cast, hit, you get like a refund. Let's say the refund would allow the Q to be at a 2 or 3 second cooldown with all of your 40% cooldown reduction items. And so Zoe would just be someone who casts a lot of Qs, or needs to cast a lot of Qs to like do the same amount of damage, while currently it's just 1 Q and you do 1,000 damage. And this is just 3 items without like those Red Dragons or Rabadon's Death Cap, and Leandri's isn't really the highest AP item out there, just these 2 being at 100 each. And this is already doing basically a lot of damage, 600-ish, and pure on the second version. So maybe moving the cooldown from Sleepy over to Q and reduce the Q damage down, so that the goal here is to cast a lot of Qs and hit a lot of your Qs instead of just that 1 shot. That seems to be the best solution for now. People are saying just reduce the Q damage, but just reducing it all on its own may not be the best thing. Zoe might be nerfed too much, since technically they're trying to say Q is her only damage. instead of, if they were to reduce Q to something more significant, maybe having Spell Thief and the 3 small bubbles that she get do a little bit more damage in that case, where the full combo she needs to do significant damage is actually to use all 3 or 4 of her abilities. Right now you could just one-shot someone, or very close to, with just Q and R. E of course helps, or E seals the deal. In fact, just E, Q, R and you kill them. You don't even need W most of the time in this case. You might use your own summoner spells and you get some W. That's okay. But you really don't need to use it at all to kill people. One last thing that I would like to mention about Q is that I have no idea, and if this is actually a fair mechanic, then please comment down below. And it appears to not be an accident, since Riot has made a patch to actually fix this, which is where you can cast Q early and then extend the duration with W, or let me try that again. So if you cast Q and then ulti, you can actually increase the duration. At first I thought if I press Q again, then it would only travel here, not that if I use any other abilities the distance will be extended. But it's actually something that might take a little bit of practice to do, something like that. But I just wondering of, like, was this on purpose? Like, did they want to design Zoe in this kind of fashion of being able to cast it ahead of time and then increase the duration with ulti? This just seems to extend the duration or life of Paddlestar longer than possibly intended, where you only have a short limit of time. You have to ulti and then press Q. If you wait too long, you press Q and then extend it. That's so much more reach and so much more leeway Zoe has to use this ability. This also works when chasing, when you could like actually walk forward just a few inches or centimeters and increase the distance to hit the target. So if the target is actually running away with you, you can still hit them. But if like this kind of mechanic with Q does not exist, wherever you click, it will only travel as far as you clicked it. So I'm not sure if this should be taken out, or if this is a fine mechanic that increase the skill ceiling of Zoe, because it's still not the easiest thing to pull off, especially in a stressful situation. But I always find it fun to like flash and then go really far. So I suppose it could be one of those big play moments where you Q, flash, ulti, R, and then it just goes incredible distance. But even so, what's the real point when there's already the maximum damage? And even though, as you can see, I basically went through the entire river distance, it's still going to do that maximum damage. And I think the maximum damage, let me just check for a bit. Is, I believe it's just like the normal Q. So yeah, you just have to R once, Q, and you already got the maximum damage done, basically. So no need to go crazy distances to get that 1000 damage one shot in the first place, unless you're really trying to chase someone down. And if you are, then no need to use Q ahead of time. Just get closer and then use the abilities when you're actually in range, instead of trying to shoot or have a very long distance skill shot. Unless you want to be cool, which is understandable, respectable, I suppose. In any case, that would be all I have for you today. If you haven't voted, please vote on the top right hand corner which one seems good, which one seems OP or not a change that will actually fix the situation with Zoe. I will go through again one more time. Q should maybe, of course, reduce damage in some meaningful way. Maybe base damage is reduced, but to combat this reduction of damage, possibly get the cooldown reduction from Sleepy Trouble Bubble. When you hit an enemy champion with your Q, you get a cooldown refunded, in this case 30% at max rank, and so you're rewarded for hitting your skill shots. And the last part is, should Q be able to travel after you cast it for longer distances. As for spell thieves, the balloons should, let's stop all the minions before they end the game. God damn. Oh shit, there's no enemy minions. Okay, enemy minions should not give summoner spells. They should only give items, and make the list of items given much more, but in a list, so it's not really random. It would just start 1 to, let's say 1 to 10, and it will go in that order 1 till 10. So if you know that like the item right now is 5, then, and you have to pick up that item too, so it's not just gonna refresh or something. It's like once you picked up item number 5, the next item that will come out will be 6, and so on and so forth, 7, 8, 9, as an example. And the balloon that the minion will hold should show the icon of that item itself, so both you and the enemy will know what that item is. So it's not really a random surprise factor where, oh no, what is she gonna get? It's so random. It's, I know ahead like 5-10 seconds or 20 seconds ahead that she's gonna get, let's say, a Zanyas, so I'm gonna have to be careful. The next thing is, let the enemy be able to step on top of the item itself to prevent Zoe from picking it up. If that is then implemented, then Zoe should have then an ability, let's say W, again, like if her W is free with no spells, it should have an active where she would throw her yo-yo out to try to pick it up. It won't do anything to enemies, it's just there like a hook to hook in that item back to her. Very short range, possibly shorter than her E, let's say. As for her E, the initial hit damage should be possibly lowered, and you are then rewarded for waking your enemy up with that pure damage as an option. If the E drops on the ground, the AoE should slowly get smaller and smaller over the duration of however long it lasts on the ground. I think it was 2 seconds. And maybe when it's flying through the air, it's slow, but when it goes through terrain, it's then fast. Right now, while it's flying through the air, it might be a little bit too slow. As for her R, I have really no problem. The fun idea is just the only thing that could stop her from teleporting back is a knock-up, since it's knocking her up above her portal and the portal closes before she could get back in. That's just the silly fun idea I had. But one must know that she cannot get away from Camille's ulti. That Camille is just a god. She could stop gods from get out of that ulti. Anyways, I hope you guys get something or find something interesting in this video, and I hope to see you all next time. Goodbye.